So one of the ideas of Apple is to eliminate moving parts. My first laptop was a PC. My DVD drive probably lasted about 3 weeks. I was young at the time and probably less careful with my hardware. My DVD drive lasted about 3 weeks because the little DVD drive would pop out, a whole tray came out, and I kept on bashing that tray when I would do whatever, you know? So I bashed the tray, and Apple said, okay, let's get rid of the tray. Instead, you insert the DVD directly into the computer. A similar thing with the, I'm just looking at my computer, so I keep on having Apple thoughts. A similar thing with the MagSafe power thing. The power adapter on an Apple laptop is done through a magnet. They found that what used to happen was someone would walk by a computer, they'd trip over the cable, and the cable would yank the entire computer off, and the computer would hit the ground and bad things would happen. So instead they made that little thing a magnet. It made it simpler and made it more elegant and more accessible. So design and just sort of that fluidity of design is very important. The third piece is experiment in being ready to fail. One of the examples I'm going to give you is, I think, a failure. I mean, it just didn't take off. It wasn't a success. We didn't replicate it because we found that we weren't able to really learn in a way that was going to be iterative, that was going to move us forward. And we can think of other examples that have, you know, that we've tried, sometimes have worked, sometimes have not worked, whatever. And the last piece is to refine. So Apple had the iPod Classic. They went through several generations of iPod Classic, the iPod Nano, which got smaller, and the Shuffle, and finally they got, most recently, to the iPod Touch, where they actually got rid of that wheel and moved into something that's far more malleable, something you can play with in new ways. So it's all about taking ideas, designing, observing, designing, experimenting, and refining. That was my very brief recap of some of the stuff that John did, which I think is valuable and I think is good. But what I like to try and do in the next, you know, however long we have together is think of some ideas of our own, and we can see if they fit into some of his categories. So I now have 6 questions I'd like to tackle, and I have 2 examples, but I'd be interested in, you know, excited to hear other people's examples, and let's play with them. So the first question I have is, you know, the event that we have, was it innovative? Was it innovation? Did it do something new, or did it do something in a new way? Was it a worthwhile innovation? We have innovations which, you know, might have been exciting, but not necessarily worthwhile. I find one of my frustrations with the use of technology is that often we say, we're going to integrate technology, but it doesn't necessarily add to the value of the learning. So John would say that integration of technology is only innovation if it allows us to better achieve our desired goal, perhaps teach something in a more in-depth way, or allows new people to achieve that goal. Maybe technology allows us to reach a broader market than we ever have before. Third question that I have is, what form did the innovation take? Was it a product, a process, a model for doing business in a new way? Those are sort of the 3 things that John lays out. Fourth is, what type of innovation? Was it sustaining or disruptive? Fifth, how is the process followed or altered? So again, like observe, design, experiment, refine. Did it follow that process? And number 6, what can we learn from the example? So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to walk through one example from my career, and then I'm going to ask others on this call to sort of offer ideas from their own career, and we can try and answer these 6 questions. Does that sound like a good plan for the next little while?
Okay.
Great.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to think which of 2 examples. Should I start with a success or with a failure?
Start with the success.
Okay. Great. So, Flora, I don't know if your school runs Shabbos Panim.
Yes.
I think they
In fact, we have one this weekend.
Oh, great. Who runs? I feel like I used to know the person who ran the Shabbos Panim there.
At our school,
Hey.
Adam Shapiro.
Adam Shapiro. I know that name. Anyway.
Yes.
So.
He got his master's in education at Davidson.
Ah, great. I think I might have known him. I used to do a seminar with people who were running Shabbos Panim in community and Checker high schools. So he was probably in that at some point.
He might have, yeah.
Great. So So we've had Shabbotanim at Chat. I mean, I'm no longer there, but we started there in about 2000. 99, 2000 was the first year of Shabbotanim. We ran 20 some on Shabbotanim every year. It was the same model, the same sort of piece going through and through and through. I arrived in the school about, I don't know, halfway, 4 years into that process. And I suddenly turned around and said, I love the fact that we're running these Shabbotanim, but they seem completely disconnected from what we're doing in school. Our Shabbotanim were mandatory for grade 9s, optional for grade 10, 11, and 12. So we had a large school. We would run 4 or 5 grade 9 Shabbotanim that each student had to go in one, and then they were optional for the other grades. So I started asking questions. I started learning about what we were teaching in the school, and specifically what we were teaching about Shabbat. And it took a couple months for me to realize that we were teaching Shabbat as a piece of the rabbinic curriculum in 11th grade, but the Shabbaton program was mandatory for our 9th graders. And what I found was, number one, the teachers who were running the Shabbotanim and going on the Shabbotanim were largely not the rabbinic teachers, were other teachers
Here
largely
also.
not. Pardon?
Here also.
Yeah, okay. And there are interesting questions as to why that's happening. And those are sort of some of the questions I wanted to learn about. But also, the Shabbaton became like more of a social program than an educational program. It was more about acculturating the kids into the school than it was, challenging them or teaching them a piece that would relate to the curriculum. Now, I believe that acculturation, especially for 9th graders who are coming into a new school, Chat doesn't have an elementary school that feeds into it. It has 5 or 6 elementary schools that feed into it, so the kids are coming from different places. And there's no question in my mind that the Shabbotanim played an important role in terms of their acculturation into the school culture. We had older students who were madrichim, who were sort of teaching them the songs, who were befriending them. It was the Shabbotanim were creating a tight-knit 9th grade, which was all important. But in terms of the actual content and driving the content, I didn't feel there was anything going on there. So I started to drive towards saying, hey, let's try and teach something about Shabbat in 9th grade, and let's try and integrate these two pieces of the curriculum. So we're going to take our Shabbat curriculum, our rich, textually based Shabbat curriculum, which is taught in 12th grade, which is taught in 11th grade, and bring it into 9th grade. And there was a long process. And one of the things I started doing was dissecting the curriculum and sitting very closely with the people, the rabbinic department who were teaching the 11th grade course, and saying, what of this could be moved into 9th grade, and how would that be helpful? How would it help you, and how would it help the students? And the other piece I tried to do was say, it would be helpful both for the Shabbaton and for the classroom if the teachers who were teaching this curriculum in 9th grade would come on the Shabbaton, and if the madrichim who were running the vast majority of the Shabbaton would come into the classroom to try and prep the kids from the classroom for the Shabbaton. This would mean that the Shabbaton wouldn't only be this isolated piece of the curriculum, separate, a mandatory piece, but separate from the classroom. Suddenly the teachers who were teaching it would come to the Shabbaton, and the madrichim who were on the Shabbaton would come to the classroom. Now, I met great resistance from the teachers. These teachers weren't coming on the Shabbaton, they hadn't bought into the process. So I took a step back and said, you know what, let's try and work out what's going on with Shabbaton and how this is valuable to them. What will make them buy in? So I started